It sounds pretty funny. Written by Anthony James Mazza. Performed by Stephen Ozerchuk. Doug Stevens sat on the bench and watched his team, the Pittsburgh Panthers, move the soccer ball down the field. They were playing the Rush Dragons for the second time that season. All of them, that is, but Doug, who'd been benched. The last time his team played the Dragons, Doug had been caught off guard for two reasons. First, by the size of the school. Who knew there were that many deaf kids in the world, much less the same county? And second, by the near-complete silence of the place. And it wasn't just the deaf players. The fans lining the home side were just as soundless, substituting hand waves for applause and fist-pumping for cheers. Doug's own team and their few traveling fans were likewise hushed in response, unsure how to react to the somber atmosphere. Then one of the deaf players was checked midfield, and he let out a long, wavering scream. To Doug, it sounded incredibly loud and incredibly funny. He knew it was wrong to think that way. It wasn't the boy's fault. He couldn't hear himself. Doug knew he shouldn't laugh. But it was funny. So funny. As the game got underway, he heard more and more of the Dragons groaning, grunting, and hoots, and he had to cover his mouth several times to hide the smirk that kept pulling at the corners of his lips. At the end of the first quarter, the Dragons scored a goal. They jumped up and down in front of the net, honking and slapping each other on the back. One of them, a tall, skinny kid with braces, began cheering. Except to Doug, it didn't sound like cheering. It sounded like donkey braying. Like a dumb donkey, said his silly internal voice, and Doug chewed on his lip. Like a deaf dumb donkey, it continued, and Doug coughed. Like a deaf dumb dragon donkey, it finished. That was it. Doug snickered, then giggled, then laughed, then roared. He collapsed to the grass, rolling, pounding his fist into the earth and cackling to the heavens. Tears streamed down his face. He barely saw his coach lean over to yank him to his feet and pull him roughly from the field. The game came to a halt, and both sides stared open-mouthed at Doug as he was led away, still laughing. The deaf player with braces stood momentarily in his way, then stepped back to let him pass. Doug's punishment was a 5-game suspension. Today's replay with the Dragons was number 5, and he couldn't wait for it to be over. Someone spoke in front of him. Doug looked up and was startled to find the braces kid standing there. Doug noticed a brownish tube curling into one of the kid's ears. The braces kid followed his look. "Just got it," the kid said, pointing to the hearing aid. "Had an operation, and now I can hear some." Doug nodded, then dropped his eyes. "Hey, listen, about last game, when I was laughing?" The braces kid waved a dismissing hand. "It's okay," he said. The nasal quality of his words was thick, and Doug was shocked to find himself on the verge of laughter again. He bit down hard on his bottom lip. "Come on," the braces kid said, and tugged at Doug's sleeve. "I want to tell you something." Doug got up and followed the kid off the sideline and into the gym. It was empty. Everyone was watching the game. "What is it?" asked Doug. "Over here," said the braces kid. "This is where we do our warm-ups." He led Douglas into another room at the back of the gym. The lights were off. The braces kid closed the door behind them and flipped on the lights. Several boys stood around holding baseball bats. One of them handed an aluminum slugger to the braces kid. What's going on?" Doug said. The braces kid swung the bat, connecting neatly with Doug's diaphragm. Managed Doug, and he fell over. The braces kid snickered. He raised the bat and brought it down full force into Doug's shoulder blades. Something snapped. "Ah!" shrieked Doug, and the braces kid laughed out loud. "Hey, you was right," he said to Doug. "That is funny." He motioned to the other boys. They stepped forward, bats poised. Soon, they were all in hysterics. This has been a Wayward Son audio production, and we'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen. The story you just heard was conceived and written by author Anthony James Mazza and performed and recorded by Stephen Ozerchuk. If you enjoyed our presentation and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to receive information about new and upcoming performances.